have lawyers and judges that have spoken against the bill, but obviously they have a dog in the fight as far as they have a monetary reason to keep people engaged in conflict, and so we've had that issue. We do have some domestic violence groups. The domestic violence lobbying in Kansas is extremely strong, and we have yet to win them over to our side, but we are working very hard to try and get them over on our side on this issue, because the statistic shows in Kentucky that there was reductions in domestic violence. So we believe that that's just a matter of education and some time. So for right now, we've been working mostly on getting the legislators on board. We're working to extend all branches to the various DV groups, and so it's a really a long-term game in Kansas.
Wow. And what are so why did you decide to form a chapter with NPO? And for anyone who's just joining us right now, I just want to take a second and say, please take a moment to share this video. The best way we can share our message on social media is by just taking a second to share this video on your own page, any group page, if you're an NPO chapter, on your NPO chapter page, your state page. So why did you choose NPO? What's the perspective of the NPO, of National Parents Organization, that brings to the fight in Kansas to make shared parenting the norm?
Yeah, so the NPO, what it's done for us in Kansas is it's given us sort of a national platform to a local issue. Before that, we were just a couple of unorganized parents, really, that were going up to the state house and talking to people. A lot of chatter going back and forth on Facebook. There were a couple of us that had individual Facebook pages for the cause. When we came together under the NPO banner, we were able to sort of bring everybody together, create a new single Facebook page. We're now over 1,000 people that have liked that page and follow us, and so it's really given us a cohesive ability to bring people together. The fact that it's not the National Dads Organization or the National Moms Organization has really helped us out, being gender neutral. And when we had our bill last year, went through the Senate, it went through a legislative committee. At the hearing, we had a record number of people speak in favor of the bill. So we had, it was around 20 people that got up and took the time to come up to Topeka and talk on a random Thursday afternoon about why they want shared parenting to get passed in the state of Kansas. And it was really striking to have the 20 odd people that got up and talked, and not all of them were associated with the NPO, but we were a strong presence there. But we had all those people talking, and it was really good to see the cross section of people. Particularly, we had, of course, dads, we had moms, we had grandmas, we had other family members. So it was really nice to see the diversity of the people that came to speak about this issue that they've been affected by.
Great. So I'm seeing that there's some people who are joining us. So if anybody has a question for Chris, please write it in a comment and I'll ask him the question. How important is it to have a diverse group representing shared parenting when you go to talk with state legislators, when you go talk to politicians, when you go talk to the press? How important is it to have both men and women, other types of diversity? If you could just speak to that for a second.
Sure. Yeah, it is incredibly important to have a diverse group. You cannot get this issue passed with just one group of people. If it's all dads or all moms, even, you're really gonna not get very far. The diversity is paramount to getting people behind you on this. And we've had really good luck with having people call into our legislators. In fact, when I was walking around Topeka the last time, we were actually walking into offices and we heard the admins on the phone with people talking about shared parenting. And so the reason that we were able to get it passed 39-1 with such overwhelming support is because we did have a diverse group of people calling out and telling everybody really how important this issue is to them. And so, yeah, you have to bring different groups of people together. you know, you're not gonna get very far if you're just one you know, kind of small group of people that's not very diverse. Everybody really how important this issue is to them. And so, yeah, you have to bring different groups of people together. You know, you're not gonna get very far if you're just one you know, kind of small group of people that's not very diverse. Everybody really.
Sorry, I think I'm getting some audio. Hold on. Let me just.
Yep, I hear you.
Yeah. Okay. I got rid of that audio. Okay, great. And so everybody, if you want to ask Chris a question, because Chris, how long has NPO in Kansas been working on a shared parenting bill?
So we've been working on the shared parenting bill as the MPO. I think it's 2 or 3 years, but we did try and get a bill put together 2 years ago, and that got shut down in legislative committee. And so we of course, you know, didn't give up, went back to the drawing board. This year we got the bill that we did, because the first bill that we tried to get through was the whole kit and caboodle. It was you know, full custody law as far as for permanent plans. So this year we went and we took the approach that Kentucky took, which was for temporary orders only. And historically, temporary orders become the permanent orders because everybody goes, well, it's been working, and why, you know, change something if it's been working. So our plan is to get the temporary orders bill or law passed, and then we'll go back the following year and go for the permanent orders bill.
Great. Katie Rubano asks, has your SB passed the House? If not, when do you anticipate this happening?
So yeah, the first part of the bill got passed in the House 39-1. That happened last week. I was there for the vote. It was really historic. It's really pretty amazing when you watch something like that get voted on, you know, that you've put a lot of time and energy into it, you know, over 3 years. And then they actually vote on it and pass it with such, you know, overwhelming support. Really kind of got choked up a little bit. This is pretty amazing to watch.
And so you also recently produced a training video that hasn't been released yet about speaking to your state representatives. What are some tips you can share about good communication when you're in a meeting with a state rep? Let's say meeting someone for the first time who doesn't know you.
Yeah, so there's a bunch I can talk about there. When you're meeting with your representatives, you have to keep in mind that they don't have a lot of time, and they talk to a bunch of people. So you really, I came up with the training video I'm going to put out is almost ready. That should be out in the next week or two. I came out with a really simple plan. It's IBTS. So you want to talk about the introduction first. You want to tell them, you know, who you are and why you're talking to them. And then you want to introduce the bill. And then you want to talk about what the benefits are. And the next two things are, you want to thank them for their, you know, their service, because many people don't know, state legislators particularly don't make a whole bunch of money. In Kansas, I think they get paid $40,000 a year, which the legislature only runs from January through April. So that's, you know, basically 4 months of the year they have to be in Topeka. And then so the rest of the year they have other jobs. A lot of them own businesses, but some of them have full-time employment. So it really does take a lot of dedication to be a representative or a senator. And so, you know, you want to thank them for their time and dedication. And you have to think that in the state of Kansas, you know, they all go to Topeka is where the capital is. But Kansas is a fairly large state landmass wise. And so there are a few of them that live in the extreme corners of the state, you know, and their trip to Topeka is 6-7 hours, you know, each time they try and go up there. So definitely thank them for their dedication and support to public service. And the last one is S is for support. And so you want to ask them directly to support the bill. So if you've ever done any sort of salesmanship kind of thing, the last thing is always kind of, you know, ask for the buy. And that's really that. So it's really simple. IBTS is introduction, benefit, thanks, and support. And then the other things I'll talk about are, you know, when you go talk to them, you want to dress as professionally as you're comfortable with. So if you go up, you know, for guys, you know, dress slacks and dress shirt. You know, for gals, just, you know, business casual attire. You want to definitely, you know, think about this like a job interview kind of thing. You're definitely going to leave an impression on them based on how you look and how you speak to them. So always be professional and courteous. You know, try and avoid any sort of conflict. And you're going to get pushback from these folks. They're going to say, "Well, we've heard this, we've heard that," and don't get upset when somebody tells you no. Part of the art of this is really to take that no and turn it into a yes. And so you may want to kind of reshape their thought on a particular thing, and don't beat yourself up the first couple of times you do this, because it really isn't that easy. It's difficult, and so you're going to get better the more times that you have interactions with people. It'll feel more natural. So the first, you know, dozen or so times you do it, it may feel a little bit weird, but it will get better, you know, over time. And then the last thing that last time we were up in Topeka, it really hit home for me. I had a legislator tell me that if they see Facebook comments and they don't know that that person is from their district, they just ignore it. So when you're commenting on Facebook or social media, or even when you email them, you want to put your address. Of course, don't put your address on social media, but if you're on social media, you can definitely put the city and state that you're from, or you can put the district if you know the number, or the whatever, however it's titled. But definitely let the legislature know somehow, the person that you're talking to, that you're in their district, or where you're from, because they don't care about comments from out of state people. So if you're not in their district in the state, at least put the state that you're in, so that they know that you're in their state. So it's really important that they know that, you know, where you're from.
That's some great advice, just to really bring this home to when you're dealing with state politics, what is happening in your state matters. And sometimes, you know, I've talked to people who are planning events or who are planning testimony at their state capitals, and they want to fly people in from out of state. And I always say, please look for experts in your state, look for academics in your state. If you need an adult child of a divorce to testify, look for one in your state, look for lawyers and judges in your state. And that is much more important and compelling in state politics than a huge name who flies in from out of state. So that is important. And also politicians, they care about votes. So the more you can support, you can show from their state and their district, the better. And what's good about state politics is that in a lot of the districts, a lot of support is not hundreds of thousands of people. It could be a few committed dozens of people or hundreds of people. So just think of it that way, that it ultimately bring it back to your state locally. And for those of you who have NPO chapters who are planning on working on this, even if you're going to plan on introducing a bill next year or 2 years from now, start looking for those experts now, starting a relationship with them, having a cup of coffee with a professor who's studying this issue, with an ex-judge who doesn't like how the family courts work, with friendly lawyers who want the system to be more collaborative. Really form those relationships, because all too often I've seen people say, oh, we're going to testify tomorrow, because a lot of times they don't give you a lot of time. And I say, well, do you have a lawyer? No, I kind of remember somebody. It's like, you need to have that locked down before this happens, because stuff can start moving very quickly. Like Chris in Kansas, do you get a lot of notice before they have hearings or bring votes?
So yeah, that's a great question. I want to talk about that, and there's one more thing I want to add. But a lot of times in your state, there is going to be a list of the hearings that happen in both the House and the Senate. And so I'm fortunate enough to be on the mailing list for both of those committees. So I get emails a couple of times a week that tell me what all the bills are going to be heard in those committees. And so if there's a bill that's kind of close to what we're doing, I might go up and either listen to the bill, or I might provide testimony if it's something that's, you know, kind of remotely close to what we're dealing with the MPO. So definitely get on those lists. And I can't stress enough how important it is for you to make time to go to the State House and talk to people face to face, because you know, you can do all the stuff you want behind a computer or over the phone, but until you go look somebody in the eyes, you know, you're really not going to make as much of an impression on them. When you go and shake hands and get to know people's names and get to know them a little bit, then really you're going to get a lot of traction. And the only way that I got on these lists for the hearings for the House and the Senate was really to go up to the State House and see the person's name on the bulletin board. And then I was able to email them and said, hey, can you put me on this mailing list? And so, they didn't give me any grief about that. They just put my name on the list, and now I get the emails from them. So this really is still about making the human connection with people. And so the more time that you can spend at the State House getting to know these folks, the better off you are. And I've had people ask me, well, they probably don't want to talk to me, kind of thing. And really it's kind of the opposite. They really do enjoy talking to people and getting to know their constituents. And so, really it's just a matter of, what's that?
It's their job.
Oh yeah.
They're not going to get reelected if they don't want to talk to their constituents. The key word there, I think you said, Chris, is their constituents.
Correct.
Which is different from someone out of state.
Correct. Yeah. So if you can get somebody in state, you're way better off than flying an expert in. Because I'll be frank, in Kansas, we're a bit of an isolationist state here in the Midwest. They really could care less what Missouri or Oklahoma or Colorado is doing. It's more about what Kansas is doing. And so, what we're doing across the country is important, but it does not have as much weight as you might think. As something that's happening in your state. And the legislators, they love talking to people. So and they love telling you about things too. So you don't be afraid to ask them questions and see what their opinions are and see what they know, because it's the best way the State House has been described to me is it's like a giant high school in suits and ties. And so it's really about making personal connections, and things can get a little cliquey, but that's just human psychology. So go be a part of the crowd, go get involved, show up and smile and shake hands and all that kind of stuff. It really makes a difference.
Great. I also wanted to bring up something for people, because this brings me to my next question. Your state representative represents your district. So in addition to being at the state capitol, they are also in your district holding town halls, holding meetings. And I've heard from a lot of people that if you go to them, sometimes only one or two people show up. And if the event's an hour or too long, you might be able to talk to that state rep for quite a bit of time. Sometimes there are a lot more people there. But don't think, especially because I'm in California, and LA to Sacramento is about a 10-hour drive. But all the state reps have an office and lots of activities in their district. So that's something that you can also go to and politely talk about this issue, which brings me to a great question. I think it's the best question I've heard so far. How do you find the time, Chris?
Well, I just don't sleep much. That's all. No.
Okay. Justin Osborne wants to know, where do you find the time? And I think that's a good question. Because you're a volunteer, right?
I am a volunteer. I do work full time. My day job is I'm an engineering manager for a company that builds aircraft, and so I've got a staff of 2 different teams that I manage at work, and then I also have my marketing company and video production company that I do on the side, and then this MPO stuff is sort of in there somewhere. I have 2 children that are 11 and 13. So,
wow.
I think I'm the poster child for you can never be too busy for what's important to you. Right. Because, one thing I've been telling legislators is, this temporary orders law is not going to help me one bit in my case. I have 50-50 custody of my children. I've had it since the day we got divorced, since the divorce started, but I've had to fight to maintain that. But this bill is not going to help me personally in any way. I'm really doing it so the future generations really can benefit from it. And I have a son and a daughter, and if they ever get divorced, I don't want them to have to go through the same thing that I had to go through. So, I think it's really just a matter of being good with time management and really making priorities in your life. And I will caution people, the one thing I do not do with the MPO is I don't prioritize the MPO over my children. I've seen some people do that in this movement, and it really kind of breaks my heart because, you only get so much time with them and they grow up really quick. So, I in making priorities in your life, make sure your kids are number one And then if you can make time to do this sort of stuff, then that's fantastic. And then the other thing too is, you don't have to be involved at a super high level to make a difference with this. Simply calling your legislators, it really does make an impact, and you don't even have to talk to the legislator themselves, because the admins will actually tally up how many calls they've had for an issue and against an issue, and let the legislator know. So, you are definitely making a difference, no matter what level you can be involved in.
That's great advice. And also the other thing about not taking in too much stuff and making sure your family is a priority is one piece of advice we're giving in all of our training. So everybody who joins an affiliate, a National Parents Organization, and if you're wondering, well, how can I join or how can I start one? So we now have 25 state affiliates. We're going to announce one soon in a new state, a Midwestern state. I won't say which one. You can go to our website, nationalparents.org, click on Find My Affiliate, and contact the affiliate leader in your state. And if you don't see your affiliate, you can ask us about starting one. For all of the affiliate leaders and anybody who's been vetted as a member of NPO, we do monthly training calls. We also have a lot of information in a drive called a Roadmap to Success. And the first piece of advice we give people is when you're starting a chapter, you need to find a core group of people to delegate tasks. This can't be something that just one person does, and it enables things not to be overwhelming, and people can focus on different areas. Some people might not even want to focus on legislative initiatives. They might want to focus on judicial education, on awareness, on outreach to other groups, on outreach to academics, on outreach to women's groups. So there's a lot to be done, and by working as a team, and Kansas has a great team, you are going to get a lot more accomplished. So I don't see any more questions. So if you have a question, everybody, you have about 20 seconds to write it. Otherwise, I'm gonna ask Chris for any closing advice. So I'm just gonna wait a few more seconds to see if we get any questions. We're getting a lot of thank yous. Julie Levanson, thanks for all you do. Linda Conrad says, thank you, Ginger, Chris, and everyone taking time to watch this. We're also getting a lot of people saying, Stephen Meehan, who runs the National Parents Organization in Pennsylvania and had a very successful hearing there, he says, create county level supporters. So that's great. So organizing your supporters by county. So we're getting a lot of messages of support. Also, Linda Steele asked, and I asked her to clarify, but she didn't. How do you feel about interim studies? And I don't really know what an interim study is. Do you, Chris?
I think that can mean a lot of different things.
Okay.
So in our state, we did have this bill proposed, and a legislative committee decided to do a study on it. Mm-hmm. So they had a couple of lawyers write a study, and of course you can imagine about how that went, which is quite interesting. But they recommended against it and said, well, it's really just the judges need some more training. We're actually going to use that as a key part of our argument during the House committee meeting. And I don't want to get too much into that because I have some really exciting stuff to announce at the hearing. So I won't do that here, but I will say, and I saw somebody that had mentioned that, that the lawyers are really against this, and you're right, they are. I mean, this is money out of their pocket, right? And so there's no big surprise there, but I will encourage people that for all of these lawyers that and judges particularly that lobby against this sort of thing, there are ways to use their own words against them. For instance, we had a judge last year in the Senate hearing that said, well, a dad may not have a bed for the children, and but if you think about it, the children had beds when they were married. So if the child doesn't have a bed after the divorce or during the divorce, it's really the judge's fault for not making the parents split the property equitably, right? So I think that there are ways that you can turn these arguments against the judges and go, well, if you were doing your job, judge, then the dad would have the resources to give the children what they need while they're in his custody. So, don't get discouraged. I think that's the biggest thing with all this, is that you are playing the long-term game here. And if you really pay attention to what the judges and the lawyers say, you can use most of their arguments against them. And that's really the most powerful thing, particularly with judges that lobby against this. Every state has ethics requirements and things like that as far as the involvement that the judges can have with political actions and things like that. So I would encourage you to look up and see what those policies are in your state. And when a judge shows up to a hearing and they lobby against your bill and they put it on the letterhead from the court, ask the state to provide you with proof that that's within the guidelines for that court. And if they're not, ask them to throw that testimony out. So
Awesome.
I think that there's a lot of things that can be done if you play the game with the judges and the lawyers. If you're smart about it, you will win most of the time, because a lot of the judges and lawyers think that they are above the law and they're above the policies that they're supposed to abide by. And so what I have seen is they're fairly reckless with that. And so it's pretty easy to catch them at their own game.
Great. And I'm getting a lot of questions. How many people are on your team? How many people are also helping in some way, or like how big is your database, and how many legislators are you interacting with?
So Kansas has 40 senators, and they're on the House side, it's 100 and something, I think. So there's that. All that information on how to contact them is on the state website. We have built a database. We use software called airtable.com, which is free software to create an online database. And so we've collected a bunch of information. As far as the volunteers go, we have, a group of about 6 people that are core, members that do a lot of volunteering. Out of that, really, there's really 3 of us that are very active. And then the rest of them are active when they can be. We also have other volunteers that have helped us collect data. We did an operation last year. We had, I think, 4 or 5 people that were going through Wikipedia for all of the news outlets, and we had them collect the information for press releases. So we're getting ready to send out. We were able to collect about 95 names and emails of places that we can send press releases to in the state of Kansas. So that's really important if you want to get your own information out. But the trick is really to work smarter and not harder. Be organized. We have our Facebook page, which we do all of our primary communications out of. We do host a once a week call on Sundays to kind of catch everybody up. And other than that, we meet at the Capitol, a couple of times a year. And there's, some face or textbook messages going on in the background to coordinate some details. But overall, the primary group is actually pretty small, but we've been very effective by being able to maximize the resources that we have.
That's great advice. So very briefly before we wrap up, I just want to let people know that if they're interested in learning more, please visit nationalparentsorganization.org. You can join a state chapter. You can start your own chapter. You can read a lot of great information about shared parenting. And if you like these videos and the work that National Parents Organization is doing, another way you can help is to make a donation. It's tax deductible. And that's what enables us to do our trainings, to do our media, to hire PR firms, to release things like the Shared Parenting Report Card. So thank you so much for all that you've done. There is 2 last questions, but we'll try to wrap them up because Chris has to go in about a minute. So Chris, as quickly as you can, what happens now with 157 now that's into the House? A little breakdown on that, please. And another question is, what are the judges' arguments against the bill? So if you want to do that as briefly as you want.
Yep, I can take those. So now we voted in the Senate, got passed 39-1 for those that just joined. So overwhelming support in the Senate. It has to go over to the House for a vote. Before it will go for a vote on the floor, it'll go through the legislative committee on the House side. They will probably tinker with the language some, and so we're working diligently to make sure the language is what we want it to be. And then once it gets passed out of the committee, it will then go to the floor for a vote. And so we're expecting that to happen. We're expecting the hearing to happen sometime in March, and we're expecting the vote sometime, before the end of April. So a lot of work to do between now and then, but that's the process. So in our state, you can either start a bill in either the House or the Senate. and then it will go to a committee hearing for the right committee. And in this case, it happens to be the Judicial Committee. And then once it passes out of committee, it goes for a vote on the floor. If it passes on the floor, it'll go to the other side, and then they'll have another committee hearing and another vote. So very long process, and the legislators can really move that process along as fast as they want to. And so, if you have a lot of support, it'll definitely move faster. And then the other question was, what were the judges' arguments against? And they really centric around their ability to have power. And so the law, they don't want additional laws, because then that's, additional things they have to consider. And so, what our temporary orders law says is that there's a presumption that both parents are equal and should have equal time for parents that are fit, willing, and able. And so we're not trying to include, domestic violence abusers and things like that. Our argument is that, the majority of the population is fit, willing, and able, and they should have, equal time. So a lot of the judges have come up and said, well, basically, dad may not have the resources, or they may not care, or, there's a lot of excuses. But in reality, there's really not a lot of good ones that they have. In fact, I haven't heard a single really good argument from any of the judges or lawyers. I think all of the arguments they made are easily refutable, and there's evidence to back up the counterclaim to their claims. I will encourage people, if you are interested about what they say, we did broadcast live from the hearing last year, and you can watch exactly what they're saying on our Facebook page. It's NPO Kansas, facebook.com/NPO Kansas, and go under the video section, and you can see and watch the videos from the hearing. You can also watch some of the videos that we had from an event last year where we had a lawyer that was talking in favor of this. Some really powerful testimony there. So there's more resources available if anybody would like those.
So that's, just to repeat again, that's facebook.com/
NPO Kansas.
So I'm going to write that right now. NPO Kansas. Great. So if people want to see a little more how it's done, they can do that. So Chris, thank you so much for coming on. Remember, if anyone out there is interested in joining NPO or supporting, you can make a donation that's tax deductible at nationalparentsorganization.org. You can see how you're stated in the shared parenting report card as well. And you can also see how to join a chapter where all of the training we give to people who are in chapters. And the reason why we do this is that we want we want to make sure that the message is being used properly. Everybody who's a part of a chapter signs a code of conduct, so we know that their behavior is always 100% professional. And Chris, any closing remarks? Close it out.
No, just want to thank everybody for joining and watching, and please let us know what you'd like to see in the future. We're here to help, and we've got a lot of wealth of information. And I would just encourage people to not get discouraged over any challenges that you may have in getting this stuff passed. Getting a law implemented in any state is a Herculean task, and it takes time and energy. So, just keep at it. We have Dennis Fauntleroy on our team who, he's always a great source of encouragement, but he says the steady knock breaks the rock. And that's very true with this sort of thing. So, just keep at it, and certainly wherever I can help out, or wherever National can help out, please let us know.
Great. Well, thank you so much for your time, Chris. And thank you everybody for listening. Please share this on your Facebook page, any group page if you haven't already.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks. Bye.